Hello, this is the last lesson of the year. I can't believe it. Thank you for joining me for all of the previous lessons. We've learnt about a lot of things: rural to urban migration, push and pull factors, millionaire, mega, world capital cities, the use of technology. We've looked at how wealthy countries and less wealthy countries have different issues in their cities. We've looked at what life is like for people who move into megacities, and we've seen how sometimes a similar problem needs a different solution. Well, this lesson is all about solutions, and if you think about it, we've really looked particularly at the housing issues faced by growing cities. That's because we haven't had very much time. We would have normally had 2 lessons and a homework each week in geography, and for this term we've only had 45 minutes, and I know sometimes I've gone over that, so sorry. But the issues faced by all growing cities aren't just housing. There's also traffic, waste, and the provision of services for people, and employment, and sometimes, unfortunately, crime. Well, whatever the issue is, the best solutions are sustainable solutions, because remember that an unsustainable solution might solve the problem now, but cause another, perhaps even bigger problem further down the line. Now, this lesson we're going to have a look at a city called Curitiba. Curitiba is in southern Brazil, and it's not a megacity. It is a millionaire city. Its population is around about 2 million people, and this city is famous for implementing sustainable solutions. So pause, write today's date, title, underline both with ruler, of course, and just do this little paragraph. Then we'll get started. Right, here is a picture of South America, and the yellow star shows where Rio de Janeiro is. The white star shows where Curitiba is. Now, on this map, it looks like they're really close, but remember that obviously, due to the scale of the map, that's about 1,000 kilometers. Speaking of scale, I zoomed in and I used this handy feature. I'm on something called ArcGIS here, and the brown lump, which you can see in the middle there, that's Curitiba, and I measured the distance from the centre of Curitiba to the coast and found that it's 81.4 kilometres. Another thing I could do on this is, zooming in again, I could go all around the city and work out its area, and it looks like 983.4 square kilometres. But I think if I did it again, I'd be a little bit more careful with where I drew the lines, but hopefully you get the idea. Now, we're looking at sustainability, and we're looking at issues in growing cities, and I'm going to talk you through the problems, and I'm going to talk you through what Curitiba has done to solve their problems, and then we need to think about whether those excuse me, whether those solutions would be practicable on a larger scale. Would they really work somewhere like Rio, for instance, somewhere that's a lot larger? So pause. Make a little table like this. You'll need, I would say, about 4 or 5 lines for each row. Right, housing issues. Housing issues in growing cities. You end up with informal housing that's poor quality. It's cramped, it's overcrowded, there's a fire risk, there's a flood risk, usually because of where these places are built. They're often built on what you would call marginal land. You know, in your exercise book you have margin, and it's at the edge and it's quite small. If you were going to do your work in the margin, it would end up being really cramped. You wouldn't be able to see it very well. It's not the best part of the page. So the best part of the page is like the normal city, where people who can afford to build good quality housing would live. And the margin, it's like the marginal land, it's not so good. So it could be a really steep hillside like Regina. It could be an area that floods often like Daravi. It could be an area that's right by the train tracks, again like Daravi. It could be somewhere that's not as good, just like the margin is not the best bit of the page. These places are built on marginal lands, so they do tend to flood sometimes. Also, these places have no services, no amenities like clean, safe drinking water. Sometimes they do have electricity, but it tends to be stolen electricity, which is not safe because it's not been put into the homes properly, and it can be overloaded quite easily, again contributing to the fire risk. And perhaps the worst thing of all is they don't have flushing toilets that are plumbed in to a sewage system that takes the waste away. Now in Curitiba, instead of just leaving it or just bulldozing it down or just forcing everybody to leave and ignoring the problem, instead what the council did was they took the marginal flooded land and made it into parks. We'll have a look at parks later. And then some areas of quite good land but further out of the city, they made some site and service projects. And a site and service project is like a little town that's built in small increments, in small steps. So each one of these little houses could be for a family to move to from inside the informal settlement, but those people would be involved in the construction of it. That would give a training opportunity for someone who was otherwise unemployable. After they've done this, they've got a skill that they can take away and be paid for. Now, it's better quality housing, but the biggest issue is that they've got clean water piped into the home, they've got the sewage piped out of the home, and the electricity is safely done. Now, these places do cost, but they're very affordable, and it's something that you can then really call your home. And as you see from the picture on one side where they've just started to be built, then on the other side, a few months, perhaps a year later, when some plants have started to grow and people can paint them different colours, and places grow from here onwards. This isn't the end of these settlements, this is just the beginning. It still preserves a sense of community. Traffic issues. This picture is in Rio, the one in daytime and the one at night time in Sao Paulo. So they are two megacities in Brazil that have awful traffic problems. Now, traffic jams or traffic congestion, it's not just frustrating if you're trying to get somewhere. It also causes a lot of air pollution and noise pollution, both of which are very bad for people's health. Also, they cause accidents, and it's a great loss of time that would be better spent doing something, whether that's work or study or just relaxing, which is also a good use of people's time after they've had a hard day's work. And huge delays of getting to from where you want to be to where you want to go. In Curitiba, the whole of the city is joined up by what they call the bus rapid transit scheme. Now, these red buses, they are tri-articulated. There's 3 sections in the bus. This allows them to be really large, so they can take a large number of passengers at any one time, and the articulations allow the bus to bend around corners. Now, the bus lanes in Curitiba are in the centre of the highway or the road, not on the edges like we have bus lanes here in Britain. And the tubes next to them are fully accessible. Now, when you go into one of these tubes, you can see here that there's some steps, but at the other side, where you just can't quite see in the photograph, there's a wheelchair lift, which you could also use for a pushchair or someone who was had other limited mobility. So they're fully accessible. You can buy one ticket for wherever you go, and that allows you to use the Bus Rapid Transit scheme for the rest of the day. So it's very affordable, it's very quick and easy because you've already bought your ticket by the time you get into these tubes. You go straight on, there's none of having to pay the driver, it's all sorted out already. And they're very frequent, they come at least every 10 minutes, but in some areas more frequently than that. And they're all linked up, so it's not just a couple of popular routes, but there are routes everywhere. It's much less pollution and it keeps a lot of cars off the road. Almost everyone in Curitiba, not just poor people, but almost everybody uses the Bus Rapid Transit scheme. Waste in cities is such a huge problem. It is dirty, toxic, poisonous. Here's a picture of waste in the Amazon River in a Brazilian city called Manaus. And this other great big pile of waste has been picked over by some people trying to find something that they could sell out of it. It's filthy and nasty, but it's also extremely unhealthy. In Curitiba, a lot of the waste has been dealt with just by a really excellent recycling scheme. You can see here that the recycling scheme separates things into 5 types of recycled material. But how do you get people to actually use these bins? How do you get people to really invest their time in recycling? Well, Curitiba do it by exchanging recycled waste, for food or toys or bus tickets. So you can take some recycled, let's say some recycled drinks cans, you could take those down to the Bus Rapid Transit station and you can exchange them for a ticket for the day. That's really useful for extremely poor people. Or you can exchange 4 kilograms of recycled materials for 1 kilogram of fresh food. That's why this picture here of the vegetables. And you can even exchange it for toys for your children. Imagine how wonderful that must be for very poor people who previously wouldn't have been able to afford to get their small children any toys at Christmas. Well, no green space is a big issue. Not only does it look awful, but I imagine it must feel awful to live in a place where there is no green space, no gardens, no parks. It's overcrowded and unhealthy. It's unhealthy physically and it's unhealthy mentally as well. But then there's the increased fire risk, and remember that these places are often on marginal land, while there's an increased flood risk too. In Curitiba, the informal settlements had been built on the land that was susceptible to flooding. Now, the council made the site and service settlements somewhere safer, and they could move people from those flooding areas and make parks in those areas instead. Now that kills two birds with one stone. In fact, maybe three birds even. Firstly, it gives the people somewhere better and safer to live. Secondly, it provides green space for everyone. And thirdly, it copes with the flooding problem, because this area, if it floods, then it's going to drain away slowly and it's not really going to be a problem because it's only a few fields. It's a nice park to walk in most of the time. You can go there and play games, you can go and relax, you can just go for a walk. It's really good for your physical and mental well-being. The picture with the sheep, those sheep are actually employees, I suppose, of Curitiba Council, because they don't mow the grass. They have sheep which are looked after by a shepherd who takes them from park to park for over the year, and the sheep keep the grass down. And the parks are all linked up by green corridors. The other picture shows you a green corridor. So it's like a narrow green space that links up the larger parks. So it is possible to go all the way around the city just in the parkland and green corridors. So this is my table that I've filled in, and I also included jobs, training, education and crime. But I know that we don't really have time to go through those things in this lesson. But I hope I've shown you that there can always be a good, sustainable, environmentally friendly way of dealing with issues in cities. However, the thing I would like you to think about now, excuse me, would these sustainable solutions work on a larger scale? Curitiba is only 2 million people. Would this sort of thing work somewhere like Mumbai? Would it work somewhere like Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro? Now, it's the last lesson of Year 8. It's been an extremely strange Year 8, and I would like to thank you for your cooperation and your resilience and the way that you have carried on working. I've tried my best to make some nice, interesting lessons to keep you motivated, and I really appreciate all the positive feedback that I've had. It's been really, really good for me as well. So thank you very much indeed, and I hope you have a lovely summer. Don't worry about September. September will come along soon enough, and when it does, we'll deal with that one day at a time. There'll be lots of information coming out from school. I don't know any more than you know at the moment about how things are going to work out in September. But when you come back in Year 9, we'll make sure that we do things safely and that we make things as interesting and as productive and knowledgeable and skillful as possible. So thank you so much. Stay safe over summer. Have a great time. Bye.